Welcome to Reshestar Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshestar, Senior Loan Officer with NFM Lending. NFM Lending is an equal housing lender. MLS number, license number 117266. So if you've never tuned into Reshestar Radio, the goal of the show each and every week is to help Charlotteans make sound financial decisions. We do that by exciting them, educating them, empower them through the material that we bring each and every week on the radio here on ESPN The Game. We're on every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. So anyway, just kind of revisiting the goal and kicking off the show here. What the goal is, obviously, is helping people make good, sound financial decisions, but I do that by bringing in expert contributors and local guests in the local communities. We talk about hot topics related to housing and finance, mortgage, inspections, insurance, investing, all kinds of different things. So what I'd like to do now is officially introduce our guests. We've got our expert contributor back on the show here this month, Preston Sandlin with Home Inspection Carolina. Preston, welcome back today.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
And Preston, why don't you, just while we kind of get things started here, tell our listeners a little bit about what you do at Home Inspection Carolina.
Oh, awesome. Well, in Home Inspection Carolina, we do home inspections, termite inspections, radon testing. Basically, you know,
shrimp Creole, shrimp barbecue. What else?
Barbecue shrimp. But you know, when you're buying a house, it's one of the big. Most people, it's their biggest investment. I know it was my biggest investment, and it's the American dream. And I like being a small part of that and protecting people from unforeseen expenses once they get in there. So that's our job to make sure that they're getting what they pay for and everything's in order.
How long have you been running your business?
A long time. Probably looking at about 21, 22 years right now.
Awesome. And how many inspectors do you have now?
20 or 21, about the same number, I guess, an inspector a year, probably right about the same. I have to ask Chip, but he's the manager. I just do the marketing, and my wife's the boss, so I have to ask them. But I think around 21.
Right. So you've got a pretty sizable group. You cover really quite a bit of the whole state. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. We cover probably about a 30-mile radius of Charlotte, and then we're in Asheville and Raleigh as well.
Right. So it's been fun. I mean, we've been friends for probably a decade now.
Absolutely.
It's been fun to see how you've grown and developed in your career. So,
Preston, same to you.
Well, it goes both ways. That's right. So, well, awesome. So glad to have you back. I'm sure we'll be talking more about some of the inspection things that sellers can take advantage of and even buyers in the future. So we'll get to that a little bit later. So let's go ahead and introduce our special guest, Jeremy Howard with Giving Tree Realty. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hey, Chris. How are you? Thanks.
Jeremy's in the house.
Thank you.
So what I like to normally do is introduce, obviously, you as the guest, Jeremy, but have our listeners understand a little bit about more about you. So how did you, you're a realtor with Giving Tree Realty. You've been a realtor for, I think, just under 2 years now, and you work both in North and South Carolina, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Anywhere that somebody wants to be in the Charlotte market, you're good with. That's a thumbs up.
Yes, sir.
All right. So how'd you get started in the business?
Well, I was a small project manager for a material handling company, and I'd applied for what I consider to be a promotion with that company in sales, and the feedback I got that it kind of devastated me a little bit. They said, "Well, we don't see you in sales. Pretty much, don't do this again." So I came home and I told my wife, "Yeah, talk about a blow to the ego, guys." So I came home, told my wife, and she said, "Well, I don't think you're really happy with what you're doing." I said, "Yeah, not really."
Yeah.
She said, "Well, why don't you figure that out? Because I don't want to be married to an old man who's not happy." And I said, "Okay." She's like, "Well, you've always been."
Honestly, that was wisdom there.
It was.
I mean, she was really pointing out that, hey, you need to adjust because nobody's going to be happy if you're miserable at work.
Yeah, that's correct, and especially her. So she said, you've always been interested in real estate. You talk about it so much. Why don't you go and get your license?" And I said, I don't know. I don't want to take another round of classes. I don't want to deal with that. And I thought she was going to slap me. She goes, "You're telling me, Jeremy Howard, the prideful man that you are, can't take night classes for 2 or 3 months and get his real estate license?" And it was kind of like that aha moment. And 5 seconds later, I was online.
So she challenged your manhood. And you were like, "I'm not going to let this happen."
I got online, signed up for Superior School of Real Estate, and here I am.
Cool. That's awesome. I mean, it's a really cool story. I think in my case, I'll speak for my wife, but oftentimes our wives have wisdom and they're able to see beyond what we can see in ourselves. And I think I've had times like that in my own marriage where my wife said, you know, you need to go a different direction here. Hate to say it, but you kind of need to hear it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, you're right.
My wife just rolls her eyes a lot at me.
He says she's
That's
the
a
boss.
message too.
If she's the boss, I don't know if she just
I think she may have just given up on me.
I don't know. I think you've done pretty well for yourself, at least with her help, perhaps. So awesome. So what are a few of the things that you like most about being a realtor?
Well, you know, I really enjoy the aspect of running my own business, and it's about as close as you can get without opening up a brick and mortar store. And I love the ability to really help people, and you know, I really thrive on figuring out those challenging things that may be difficult in a home purchase or a home sale.
Right.
I consider myself a problem solver, so when those issues come up, I don't like them. It'd be nice if it was a smooth transaction, but it gives me a chance to show my outside the box thinking ability, and I tell my wife, I call it thinking outside the yard sign.
There you
I
go.
like that. I like that.
So am I thinking outside of the deed of trust, maybe? Is that what I'm doing?
Possibly.
There's not much of a box in the mortgage world. Thinking outside of the loan estimate, maybe. But, you know, I have to say, I can really connect with you there, because I think that's partially what's gotten me where I have in my career, and that is that when somebody brings a challenge on a customer, sometimes I feel like perhaps maybe some other professionals in my industry just aren't looking close enough, because 9 times out of 10, I find a solution. It may not be an easy solution, and it may mean the customer has to sacrifice more, it may mean we have to get a gift, I may have to tell them to pay something. But a lot of times there is a solution under the application, under the nose of the applicant, right? But that's what makes it so much more worthwhile, right? You're not only helping somebody, but you've now helped create a dream that maybe they thought they couldn't achieve.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
You know, you guys are both speaking of being problem solvers, and I'm the inspector. I'm the problem child. So we all fit in well together.
But Jeremy then has to solve that problem, right?
Yeah, he has to solve this problem. But I might be able to help him out a little bit today, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Well, Preston, while I have you and you're kind of talking, what is it that you like about your business?
Oh, I
as
mean,
an inspector?
I love everything about it. I mean, I love going back to the fact that it's the American dream. You know, I was a school teacher before I was an inspector, and I taught school for 3 years, and you know, I wanted to change the world, and you know, I felt like I was fighting the tide. And as you know, most of the teachers are in Raleigh today because, you know, for more pay. But neither here nor there. Probably about half of the kids that I had are my Facebook friends today. They're all like 30 now. You know, they were like 10 then. And you know, I've helped them a lot with their home purchase, and it's just full circle, man. It's pretty cool to see, you know, somebody that you know, we're teaching algebra to, or pre-algebra to, now, you know, owning a house and having kids, and it's awesome. It's awesome. Love to be a small part of it.
That is cool. All right, so last question here before we take our first break and then head into our theme for the show for today. Jeremy and even Preston, I'd like for you, we do this every segment, is just describe what you believe was going on in the Charlotte housing market. What's the market like?
Well, if you're a seller, there's no better time to put your property on the market.
And please dial 704-277-4463. That is actually my cell phone. So if anyone listening is interested in talking to any of us here in the studio, it's 704-277-4463. Take it back.
All right.
Sorry.
Thanks for that plug, Chris. So definitely hot for sellers, but it can be extremely tricky for buyers because houses are, if they're priced correctly and they're really desirable neighborhoods, I've seen houses go as quickly as an hour.
Yeah, and
Oh, yeah,
oftentimes above price. I had one, really a buyer I was working with this week, and it's a small price point, and we're talking $119,000,
Yeah.
and it appraised for $6,000 below, and then the sellers came back and said, no, we're not coming down on the price. Well, it's hard for a first-time buyer to come up with an extra $6,000, right? And so we had this whole discussion on, okay, can we make it work? Can we get the extra money? Because if he walks away from the deal, there's not much else out there. It's not like there's 3 other houses in the same neighborhood that he can just grab.
Yeah.
There's just very limited inventory. So it means starting all over, and who knows what's going to be available because there's just not much.
Can I compound that issue real quick?
Go ahead.
So you have a deal that's, you know, 6,000 above the appraisal, and now the inspector comes in and does the inspection, and there's $5,000 worth of damage.
Right.
So you're like $11,000 kind of in the net or in the hole of where you should be, and that's a problem too. But I have a solution, and if you stick with
Stay
us,
tuned.
we'll talk
That's
about
right.
that a little bit later. Little
Perfect.
teaser there for you.
Yeah, so really at the end of the day, I think the market hasn't changed much in the last several years, and that is if your buyer is tricky, there are still houses out there, but you have to really do your homework. But if you're a seller, the good news is, you know, your home typically will sell pretty well, especially if you pay attention to our 10 mistakes that sellers make, which we'll be talking about when they go to sell their home after our quick break here. So you're listening to Reshestar Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshestar, licensed loan officer with NFM Lending. So stay tuned to our show. We'll be